This is the beginning of a new turn. The first thing you do these things on all the turns except for the very first turn. The very first turn of the game starts in the action phase. It does not start here, but turn number 2 and the subsequent turns all begin with this step. Here's, for example, we're on turn number 2, and from now on, the first thing we do on a new turn is to repair and resupply units. All units that have a yellow cube on them have been used to attack on the previous turn during combat. All units with the black cube have been damaged. Only the regular units have a black cube. Any other units that are damaged are placed in the calendar, in the calendar holes, but that's another story. That's for combat. Right now, the blue player, nationalists, have the initiative, so they can go first and repair. So for example, here, they'll just pay 1, 2, it's just 1 point per yellow cube, 3, and that's it. They have nothing else to repair. They have 3, and they pay 1, 2, 3. The red Republican player is also going to pay 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 resupply points. 1, 2, 3, 4. And they have a damaged regular unit here. And that unit has a black number there of 3 combat factor points. So he has to pay 3. They have to pay 3 to completely repair the unit. 1, 2, 3. And they have also 4. This ship has been severely damaged, and they pay 4 to repair that ship. So they pay 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's how repair is done. Now the next thing to do is to deploy any units that you want or you can pay for on turn number 2. Nationalists have turn number 2 there, and the Republicans have turn number 2 right there. So the Nationalists want to deploy all these units for 8. 1, 10, so that's 25. And then they have 8 and 2 of these. They have 2 of these, so that's 16. 25 plus 16 is 41. Now, you don't have to deploy all of them. You could deploy just a few if you want to conserve finances, right? Nationalists right now do not have a lot of reserves there, unlike the Republicans who have some tokens and they have gold reserves. And you have to look at, what's the most necessary weapons. They don't have any tank units here. So, and they have the powerful Condor Legion. So let's just say they leave their own aircraft, the nationalist aircraft units in place there to save some money. So instead of paying for 41, they pay 29 to deploy everything. So they deploy all these, they pay 29, and they leave that there. And they can always deploy that on the next turn or on any other turns. Any other turns that you're playing, you can deploy anything from that turn and from any turns that come before that have not been deployed. So on turn number 3, 4, or whatever turn, this aircraft unit here can be deployed at that time. 1, 2, 3, and 1. So that's 29 points. And we can deploy these units as per the rules. Oh, it's also important to remember that you can deploy units from that turn, previous turns, and also from the any turn box. So the any turn it serves a special purpose that we talk about during combat. Basically, there's some units that have a green triangle that are not placed on the regular calendar, but because they're very special units and shall we say elite, like for example the Army of Africa here, it was damaged and placed here. So anyway, the point is that you can deploy units from your turn, past turns, and any turn. So the cost is not mentioned here, but you go basically to the nearest cost. It's a regular unit. A regular unit usually costs, well, it always costs 10 points to deploy. So basically, that's the cost to deploy a regular unit that's on the any turn. So let's add another 10 points here, or I should say subtract from the finance and deploy. Now, as soon as you pay and you decide where you're going to deploy them, or as soon as you pay, basically, you want to, when you know you're going to deploy them, you deployed 2 regular units here, or reinforcements. So there was at least two regular units that were deployed, and you have to subtract 1 point per regular or reinforcement. So 2 reinforcements, you subtract 2 points, 1, 2, and that's your manpower, basically. And the rules for deployment are, you can deploy on any of the yellow spaces there, the yellow points, which are transit points, 1 unit per transit point, or if it's a city, you can deploy up to 3 units stacked in a city, if they are militia or regular units. If they're other types, then you have to put them in the transit points. You're also not allowed to deploy on the enemy's zone of control. So you cannot deploy, this is the enemy, the red enemy, you cannot deploy here or here, because that would be close to his, any transit points close to him or to one of his cities. You would not be able to deploy here, for example, because here is close to Badajoz or Merida. It has to be at least outside of the immediate transit points around the city, so outside the zone of control. This unit can be deployed at any point of the map, because it does not have any conditions in zones of operations. We'll look at that in a minute. So looking at the map, because the Republicans are actually pretty strong over there, they've been able to make an offensive north and take a lot of the countryside there. I think here it's lacking. We could safely put it, as per the rules, put the Army of Africa there. And at any point in the game, might as well do it now, we can put its commander. Since the Army of Africa has that little moon symbol there to signify, it's a special elite unit from Morocco, it's better to choose one such commander, either Yagüe, for example, or Orgaz, or Castellón. Castellón, you cannot put him there on that, commanding that, because he only has 1 star, as you can see right now. If he's promoted, he gets 2 stars, but right now he has 1 star, and the Army of Africa requires a commander with 2 stars. So you could put, let's put Yagüe. Usually I like to use him, because that's historically more, he was in control, except for the few times where he expressed an opinion different from Franco's, and he was put on probation for a few months. But there, we deployed that. It's good to deploy the big units first. This army, I put it here because it was 1 point. But as a matter of fact, the Army of Africa has a number 3 there. That means it can have itself plus 2 other units of reinforcements. These little blue units that are the same size as this chit. It can have 1, 2, 3. So basically 3 layers, including this one. And for that reason, as a matter of fact, I'm not going to deploy it here. If I want to stack it up, I'm going to put it in the city, Palencia. Let's put it there. And that way, I can put the reinforcements right under it. As such, it can take, so this is basically 1, 2, 3 layers. And of course, each one of those reinforcements has the same combat value as the army itself. So if the army has a combat value of 5, each layer has 5, so that's 15, a combat factor of 15. Now the tanks are German, and so you want to put them as close as possible to where the Germans are deployed. So the Germans can be deployed here, and they can be deployed there. If you don't follow that rule, it's not the end of the world, but we're trying to make this historically accurate. They mostly came through Seville, so I'm going to put the tank here. These guys can also have to follow that rule, so we'll put them there closer to that deployment zone there. This specific artillery happens to be from the Condor Legion, so we'll place that there. The other thing you can do on the any turn box that's there, there's a group of markers for fortifications. It's these ones. These for the Republic cost 22. For the Nationalists, they cost 20 because they have always a little bit more favorable conditions. And you could deploy any of them. They're very expensive, of course. You take one, you pay the amount, 22, and you can fortify a city. And that will give you special defensive qualities which are discussed in combat. To deploy a ship, it's the same principle. Of course, you pay the amount, in this case 30. Ships are pretty expensive. And then you place it on any of the ports that have naval bases, basically. These are naval bases, and these are regular ports. Here, you can't deploy there, or even have ships there, naval ships there. But you can put them on the naval bases. And this is a capital ship. Capital ships are the ones with the name. So basically, any of the cruisers, the battleships, those are capital ships. And they can only go where it says cap, right? The other smaller ships can go over there on the cap, and they can also go on these other naval bases. The Nationalists usually have those two up there, and the Republicans have one here in Cartagena. And then there's other ones that are for the smaller ships. For the Republicans, the same thing applies. Let's count what their deployment will cost. 14 plus 4 plus 12 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8. This one is free, it's just the commander. Plus 3 times 10 for the layers. A lot of money. So that's an impressive 67 points. That's a lot. Now here's the thing. You are able to do the following when you deploy. In the deployment, you can use your resources to pay for deployment if you have them there. That way, what you're simply doing is, instead of depleting your finance that you're going to need for your battles and for your movements, you are going straight to the economy. So 67, we'll do this. We'll pay 100, pay 100 and receive 33 and change. So 25 and 8. And that way I didn't deplete the finance. Use that instead. Again, we have to subtract the regular units or reinforcements. So we got 1, 2, 3 reinforcements, 1 regular. So that's 4 points. 4 points. 1, 2, 3, 4 for the Republicans. And again, this is no matter how much money you have or weapons or how well the war is going, the fact is if you run out of men, if you run out of weapons and money, you can lose. But if you run out of men, you can also lose. So this is the population able to fight in the war. And the Republic started with a little bit more than the Nationalists, and this reflects that. And now I can deploy. Now for these, let's talk about something quickly, which is the zones of operation. Units such as this one, or for example, Andalusia, Extremadura, Maniobra doesn't have that. But you'll notice that Extremadura and Andalusia, they have zones of operation, which coincide with, they're described here. North, center, southeast, southwest, west. And you have to place your units within those zones. So for example, the Ejército Popular Catalunya, in the Catalonian army here, popular, has to be, which is anarchist as well, has to be deployed in the east. And if you look closely, the east is east of the Valencia, Madrid, San Sebastian line. It's easy to see. I mean, if you're playing this game, you're a little bit knowledgeable of the geography. Madrid, Valencia, San Sebastian. So basically, anywhere east of this area here. Since we conquered this part already, and it's east of that, we could place it, we can't place it here, remember, because this is right next to it. It's in the zone of control. Arguably, you could say, is this in the zone of control? Well, yeah, because there's no other points between these. So that would be in the zone of control. So you could place it here. And again, you want to choose a commander right away, perhaps. The best thing to do is to choose an anarchist commander because there's the A there. If you didn't have any here that you like, you could use this one. You could just switch them. At any time in the game, you could switch commanders from armies. That's easily done, right? So you could put Mera here if you want. And then, yeah, put a different one there. You can do that right now as well. And that commander can have 1 star only, so you don't want to waste the commanders of 2 stars. Let's pick a commander with 1 star. But because that unit is not the communist unit, communist army, let's try to pick a commander with 1 star that is not a communist. There's Campesino there, which was the nickname of this commander. And he was of great value later, actually, to the communists for propaganda purposes. Anyway, he's there. Yeah, we can actually put, this one allows 2 layers, including this one. So you could put 1 layer under it. That's like, see, 1, 2. There you go. Put that there. And you can do that because it's in a city. You could put it in of course, a unit that is already there. But you know what? You cannot place it here because this unit is not in a city. So let's do the smart thing and reinforce Madrid. Madrid has the Ejército de Centro, and they're allowed 4 layers. So you know what? You don't want to lose Madrid. So let's just put everything that we have here extra there. And we could put an extra one when we have it. Madrid is extremely difficult to fall, but one of the reasons is because it had enough troops, usually under Miaja, and we want to reflect that. So we're going to leave that there. Then we have the air that we paid for. Air is not placed on any of the transit points. Air is placed on any part between the transit points. So you could place it anywhere as long as it is away from the enemy. It cannot be too close to the enemy. It has to maintain this distance. So for now, we could place it right there. Now let's deploy the tanks and the artillery. So basically, the auxiliary units. Have to place it in transit point or city. Where am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to use it for Mera. As soon as the action starts and movement, I'm going to move it there. So right now I'm going to put it here. The Republican tanks must be placed here. Unless you really can't, you have to place it as close here as possible. There's these 2 little symbols. There's the symbol for the Soviet tanks and Republican tanks. They're basically the same thing, but it's to reflect the aids that the Soviets gave. And that's because historically they were, you know, the Soviets and Republican tanks were in Arkenna. Arkenna was the area, historian Anthony Beaver in his book, The Battle for Spain, called it a watering hole. So it was just north of Murcia there, and that's where the tanks were. So we're going to deploy it there. We'll put 1 in Murcia and 1 right there. And so we comply with the deployment rules. But once again, it's not the end of the world if you forget or you don't deploy. This is to make it historically accurate as possible. A lot of this game has to do with historical accuracy, and it's okay to fumble the rules here and there. Finally, here's 2 units of the first units. This is October 1936, the first units of the famous international brigades. And just like the tanks in Arkenna, they were historically situated southeast of Madrid in Albacete. So that's where they were, and the symbol is right there. You could see it. So that's where you're going to deploy them. And you could have 3 stacks per city, three high. So there it is. Just put them right there. That's where your internationals go. And then from there, they can go anywhere in the country. Foreign commanders, as you can see, for example, the Italians there, or Italian commanders for the Corpo Troppo Volontario, the CTV, and Kleber for the international brigades. Those are placed over there because they don't have a roster, basically. So, and they can't really be demoted. And he has a little green circle, so you can read what that means. Kleber, it says that he only commands international brigades. You might as well put him right on the head of these. And as per the rules, any commander can have up to 3 units under him. In a turn, you can exchange the piece that you are going to deploy for another piece, namely an army. For example, let's just say that you're on turn 6 here. You can deploy any of these armies, all of them or any of them, and you have one in the south and one in the west. You also have the Manobra that you could deploy at any part of the map. But let's just say you want to put an army in the east instead of the south. Now, you don't have an army in the east there, and you would look elsewhere in the map where there is such an army. And there's the Ebro army here, and it's 2 turns up, turn 8. So what you would want to do is to, instead of deploying that one, you would want to deploy the East Army there of the Ebro. So you're going to exchange them basically. To do this operation, you simply exchange this army for the army that you want to deploy. So you put this back where the Ebro used to be, and now you're going to deploy the Ebro one there, which is what you wanted, an army in the east. However, you must pay twice the cost of that army. So instead of paying 12, you have to pay 24 to deploy that army. So it's very costly, and you would only want to do that if you would really insist on deploying something in the east here instead of the south. The turn comes up and you're able to deploy something on the south. The turn comes up and it allows you to deploy something on the south, but you really don't want to. You really, because of your strategy, you prefer to do something in the east. That's where you would be forced to look for a suitable army as per the zones of operation. So therefore, yeah, if you want to do that, you would have to switch them, pay double, and then deploy in the east. But it's not really worth it. In hundreds of hours of playing this game, I probably did that once or twice. When the deployment is done, the strategy phase is done.